Hello everyone, welcome to the channel. My name is Excoundrel. If you are a new viewer and you're coming from the YouTube homepage, the recommended or the up next, I generally do very educational Wildrift content focusing on tier lists, game theory, champion guides and esports analysis with the real focus to help you guys get better at the game and climb the ranked ladder. My tier lists are designed to help you make good decisions in champion select and maybe help you focus on certain champions, especially as you start to get higher up those ranks and you start getting into the areas where it's more meta driven. So generally in like Emerald and Diamond and sometimes in Platinum, you'll find that the champion select and kind of the games are very driven by the current meta. And that is what these tier lists are supposed to help you understand. If you're a returning subscriber, thank you, welcome back. You may wonder why this tier list is late compared to the fact that we've had Xayah and Rakan released for quite some time now. Well, I'll give you the reason. I thought there was going to be a balance patch on Monday, so I was waiting to do this tier list until the balance patch had come through. However, the balance patch didn't come. So what I'm going to do is just do a tier list with Xayah and Rakan, as well as adjusting some of the tier list, especially around the mid lane, in terms of what I've seen transpire over the last few weeks. And then when a balance patch does eventually come, we'll just do another one. Of course, got to give a shout out to G2A. Thank you for sponsoring the channel. There's a reference link in the description below. And if you like the content and you like the tier list, even if you disagree with it, I'd love to hear your comments. Make sure you give me a like and a subscribe, and feel free to chat with me in the comments down below, as I'll do my best to get through to every comment, you know, and try and discuss the meta. We also discuss the meta on my Discord sometimes, so feel free to pop over to that and have a chat with me. So without further ado, let's jump into the tier list. We'll start off in the Baron lane. Okay, so Baron lane, and there have been some changes in the Baron lane, and a lot of you may have seen this. Malphite has suddenly just become, like, absolutely, in every single game I have played forever. He's become like the premier top laner, and I think a lot of people have kind of figured out how to play through his bad matchups. He has the flexibility of building tank and AP. He's got good matchups into a lot of the top laners that you see as an AP champion, but also can build tank when necessary. I've also moved Kennen down. Kennen, I genuinely thought was going to be super strong still, but people just don't seem to want to play him anymore. I still think he has good teamfight utility. I still think he's a great pick. He's way more useful than, for instance, like a Darius or Fiora in the top lane, especially when it comes to teamfights. But really the only people that I'm seeing make use of him are pro players. And, you know, Ghost Gaming, for instance, played a lot of it in the European Singularity Finals, and they won with the Kennen. But he's beaten by Malphite in lane, so Malphite kind of gets that spot. Malphite has just become the premier top laner out of nowhere, and he was already good. He was in S tier before, but now he's kind of moved up to S+. I've also moved Yasuo up to S tier. I've seen a lot of good Yasuo players, and Yasuo has started to feature in a lot of games, especially I think due to the prevalence of Malphite, but also due to knock-up based champions in general. Rakan entering the meta has been a blessing for Yasuo as well, and so Yasuo is starting to creep into more games. We're seeing him a lot more. He's a very, very good champion with the buffs. He's in a good spot, actually. I don't think Yasuo is overpowered, neither do I think he's underpowered. I think actually Yasuo is in a really good spot right now, and actually in general is a really good champion. I've put Lulu on the A tier because actually Lulu top has been being played a bit, and I think with the the prevalence of the Lulu Jinx meta, I've actually seen Lulu tops with Janna supports and just an unkillable Jinx. So Lulu top actually has a lot of good matchups into melee champions as well, but she is a little bit low damage and often relies on a carry to kind of at least make her worth picking. So good pick, but obviously a little situational, I would say. I've moved Mundo and Nasus up in B tier over Jax, Jarvan and Teemo. I think Teemo could be better, but it's all very much dependent on like who's playing him realistically, and I think Teemo is a little bit hit or miss sometimes. And of course, I am here to remind you that Tryndamere is hot garbage, and if you pick him, you should feel ashamed. Okay, going on to the jungle. I obviously haven't changed this from the very early beta when Xayah was absolutely OP. Jungle hasn't actually changed much, honestly. The jungle has remained exactly the same. Honestly, I think it's still dominated by Olaf when picked, but obviously you see a lot of Lee Sin and Shyvana beyond that. Jarvan maybe deserves to move up a little bit, but honestly with Jarvan I feel like it's incredibly hit or miss. I think you have to be really coordinated to make Jarvan work, and that's why I think he's better in competitive than he is in solo queue, and obviously my tier lists are kind of focused towards solo queue. Evelynn, Vi, Wukong, Amumu, all good picks. Like, they all have their place. I would say that I was considering moving Amumu down a little bit because he's so weak to things like Olaf and Lee Sin, but he still has his place versus like Shyvana, for instance. Like Amumu is pretty good into Shyvana because Shyvana's not going to counter jungle you or not be able to duel you effectively, so Amumu is still good. Xin Zhao, Jarvan, Graves, and Gragas are all good junglers. Gragas obviously better in other lanes. I've kind of said this before. Like, Gragas is kind of like a last resort jungler for me. Like, if I have to get stuck with jungle, and I'd already picked Gragas, and someone trolls and champion select, and I have to go jungle, then, you know, Gragas would be my option there. The rest of the sort of the pack, you can see that Yi, Jax and Mundo. I actually maybe underrate Mundo a little bit. It's really difficult. Mundo can be really good, but he can also be really, really crap. And it really depends on like the jungler that you're going into. Like into an Olaf and a Lee Sin, he's going to really struggle early on, but obviously Mundo starts to come alive a little bit later. And like his first dragon fight can be a little bit int, because like the Mundo's not the best early duelist. Well, he is a good early duelist, but in a team fight situation you can burst him more readily. Plus, people are more aware of the fact that you just need to build like an Executioner's Calling early on, and Mundo sucks. So, you know, I think Mundo's kind of air. Tryndamere is slightly better in the jungle than he is in the top lane, but only by a very small margin. And Camille, better in top lane, honestly, for the most part, or Baron lane. She's got such a slow jungle clear that I don't really think it's worth playing her in the jungle, but her ganks can be okay, especially post level 5. But I think still dominated by Olaf right now. He's still just an absolutely broken champion. Alright, to the mid lane, let's go. Again, kind of dominated by a single queen of the mid lane, which is Orianna. I think she's head and shoulders above pretty much any other mid laner right now. Her damage output is disgusting. Her safety is disgusting. Her teamfight utility is disgusting. She has a shield. Orianna is definitely in a very strong spot. And then I think Aurelion Sol, Corki, Twisted Fate, Yasuo, and Ahri are all good picks. Again, I've moved Yasuo up. I believe him to be stronger than I originally thought, especially with the buffs. So I think Yasuo is in a good spot. Ori did get a very minor hotfix to her ultimate cooldown, but it doesn't make a diddly squat of difference. She's still really, really strong. Gragas, he's okay. I think most people are realizing that Gragas is a better Baron laner right now, just due to the matchups that he has. But Gragas can still definitely be played mid. I've moved Kennen down. Again, I don't think Kennen is as strong as he previously was, but he is still good when played in the right hands. Zed Akali, I've actually moved Fizz up to A tier. He was in B tier previously. I think Fizz is better than I was giving him credit for. He is a relatively solid assassin, and obviously has a lot of teamfight disruption and utility. Can be a bit weak to some of the picks that you see above unless you're able to go all in very early on. However, like for instance versus Corki and Twisted Fate, you know, you can go all in level 5 as a Fizz and actually end up winning that matchup. So, you know, Fizz in the right hands can do really well. I've moved Lulu from C tier to B tier for the same reason that I put her in the top lane tier list. I think that she's a good pick. Low damage output, which is why I prefer her in Baron lane to mid lane, because I think mid lane is a lot of your damage in the game. And so if you take Lulu in the mid lane, you're kind of really gimping your teamfight damage. But again, she kind of relies on a carry. Evelynn, definitely not a strong mid laner anymore. Her wave clear is not good enough in the early game. And, you know, when she starts to get to 5, that's when you're going to be roaming. But, you know, with Aurelion Sol in the meta, like he can match your roams, Twisted Fate can match your roams, Corki with the package can do so as well. And Annie and Lux, they're okay. There aren't really many bad mid laners right now. That's the thing to say. There aren't any like really bad mid laners. All of these mid laners can very easily win games, especially if you've got a really skilled Lux player who can hit her skill shots. Like there aren't, like if my mid laner to pick any of these mid lane champions, I wouldn't be sad because they're all okay. I think Lulu is a little bit more specific, but she is still an okay mid laner in the right hands. So everything on this, every mid laner in the meta right now is just decent. There are some that are obviously better than others, as this tier list suggests, but there are no like Tryndamere level mid lane picks in my opinion, especially not the common ones anyway. And I don't generally tend to include things that are completely out of the blue and shouldn't be played in mid lane for the most part anyway. So that's mid lane. Again, dominated really by Orianna, but I think, you know, Aurelion Sol and Corki are very close behind as they're quite strong right now too. Okay, let's move on to the AD carry role, the marksman position. And obviously this is the one where Xayah has been included, and I haven't really shifted this round at all. I genuinely believe not much has changed here. I think Xayah and Misfortune are just the best AD carries in the meta right now. I'm almost tempted to put Misfortune a little higher than Xayah, but what I would say about Xayah is she doesn't fall off. So, you know, if Misfortune can't get control of the early game, then sometimes it can be a little iffy. Plus, Misfortune's a lot less mobile, or a lot less, you know, instantly mobile than Xayah. Xayah's got 2 abilities that allow her to reposition fairly quickly. Misfortune, not so much. Jinx is good. Jinx is S++ when paired with Lulu, but then by herself, she's just, you know, solid. She's very, very good at snowballing. She's got great carry potential in the late game. Arguably, I'd say is the best late game champion on this list. A tier is just full of like solid AD carries right now. Draven is good. Actually, Draven beats the majority of the champions above him, but if you play safe into Draven, he doesn't get ahead and he becomes a bit useless. I think I maybe overrate Ashe a little bit. I've played a lot with and actually as Ashe quite a lot, and she feels incredibly weak in terms of damage output. It really takes a while for her to scale up, and I think she is arguably weaker than Jhin, Ezreal, Corki, Tristana, and even Xayah. Yeah, Ashe is an interesting one. I also think, you know, Varus, the problem is I haven't seen enough Varus played to really make a good assessment about whether he should be changed, but I have seen some good Varus players, especially paired with Lulu, and I think it might be Lulu that Lulu's making AD carries look good rather than the AD carries being good themselves, which is why the assessment's quite difficult to make. But when it comes to Xayah, she's a solid AD carry. She's nothing special. She's definitely better than Vayne. You outrange and bully Vayne really hard. I think she's better than Varus. She's not as good as the majority of the AD carries on the list, and that's because her damage output on her 3rd ability is rather low and doesn't scale with critical strike like it does on the PC. And so Xayah feels very underwhelming, even though I thought she was going to be insane. Her ultimate is obviously really strong and can be, you know, when used correctly, can be awesome, but she's just a little underwhelming right now. I think she needs some tweaks, and I genuinely think she could be a really high tier AD carry once those tweaks come through. But right now, the meta is completely dominated by Jinx, Misfortune, and Xayah, and sometimes Draven. You'll often potentially see some Jhin and some Ezreal. You often get those Vayne 1 tricks that play Vayne quite a lot, but Vayne takes too long to come online for me. She's too weak in the early game. But honestly, for the most part, Xayah, Misfortune, Jinx, they absolutely dominate the meta right now. Alright, we're going to move on to the support role now. And let's have a little discussion about this one. Obviously, Rakan coming in has shifted things up, and actually, I've moved Janna back up to S tier, and I've slotted Rakan into A tier. I think Rakan is good. I think, unfortunately, he's a little bit... if you don't get rolling off the first dragon fight, especially if you're behind, Rakan can feel really underwhelming. He's got a great engage. He's really strong in team fights, but obviously he's much squishier and much more easy to kill than an Alistar or a Braum. And so I think Rakan... I'm maybe undervaluing him here. I think Rakan could be S tier for sure, but his laning phase is a little weak, and you have to pair him with an aggressive AD carry, and especially in this enchanter-dominated meta, it can be difficult to really take advantage of the laning phase. Janna, I think I underrated last time. I do think she's strong enough to be on the tier with Braum. I've played her quite a lot recently. She feels really good into Lulu as well. I've played Janna MF and Janna Xayah, and both of these lanes do well into Jinx Lulu, so... I think Janna is definitely a little stronger than I previously gave her credit for, but honestly, the meta for the most part is still Alistar, Lulu, primarily Lulu. Lulu is still super strong. If anything, I'd make her S++ tier, but I just didn't have the space on the graphic to do that. But Lulu is still super good. Alistar's still great. Braum and Janna are good solid picks after that. Janna, I think especially, is coming back into the meta right now. I think Rakan's a great pick, but I do think, you know, can be a little underwhelming when paired with a defensive AD carry. Your laning phase is a little weak for that part, but obviously you always have that really strong engage that you can make work in your advantage. So this is my tier list. I think there are some shifts that I would have liked to have done to the AD carry list, but it's very difficult to get a reading on how AD carries are right now, because honestly the meta is kind of dominated by Lulu, and as I said, Lulu is kind of making some AD carries look better than they should do. Like for instance, I've had Ashe Lulu and it's been insane to play against. It's just the Lulu who's making everybody really strong right now. I think once we get like Thresh and we get more sort of aggressive supports like Leona as well, this enchanter meta will start to die down a bit. But yeah, Lulu is definitely in the driving seat for the strongest support and is making a lot of AD carries look really good. Anyway, enjoy the tier list. I hope you liked it. If you did, feel free to like and subscribe and leave me some comments down below. That would be awesome. See you soon.